The night of April 13th, 1945. The historic Dutch city of Zwolle is a silent hostage. 50,000 civilians wait in their homes, knowing that at dawn, the liberators will become destroyers. Allied command has made the cold, logical calculation. To avoid a brutal street-by-street fight that would cost hundreds of Canadian lives, they will level the German positions with artillery. The survival of the city and its people is collateral damage in a final, brutal equation. But in the dead of night, two shadows move across the open fields. Private Leo Major, a 23-year-old French-Canadian with an eye patch, and his friend, Corporal Willie Arsenault, have volunteered for a reconnaissance patrol. Their official orders are simple: sneak in, scout enemy strength, and report back in 6 hours to guide the bombardment. What their commanders do not know is that Major and Arsenault have made a secret, personal pact. They are not going to just scout Zwolle. They are going to try to liberate it themselves. The idea is madness. 2 men against a fortified German garrison. Major, a former pipe fitter from Montreal, has seen what artillery does to cities. He carries the scars of war, having lost his eye to a German phosphorus grenade. He refuses to let Zwolle become another smoldering ruin. As they approach the ominous silhouette of the ancient Sassenpoort Gate, the weight of their decisions settles in. The streets of Zwolle are tomb, slick with rain. Every shadow could hide a German sentry. The 2 Canadians move like ghosts, using rubble and alleyways. They rely on crude sketches from a local farmer, hunting for machine gun nests near the railway. The tension is absolute. One misstep means death and a failed mission. They are not elite commandos, just determined soldiers driven by a conviction that there must be another way than destruction. For a tense hour, they are successful, mapping positions unseen. But just after midnight, near the railway tracks, their luck runs out. The sharp, terrifying bark of a German MG-42 machine gun shatters the silence. Muzzle flashes illuminate the darkness. In the chaos, Arsenault stumbles, his position given away. A burst of fire finds its mark. Corporal Willie Arsenault falls, killed instantly. Major is now alone in the heart of occupied territory. His friend dead, the mission in ruins, and the clock ticking toward a devastating dawn. The unexpected turn is not a dramatic firefight, but this sudden, crushing loss. The mad plan for 2 becomes an impossible mission for 1. Alone in the dark with his friend's body, Leo Major faced a choice that defined his entire life: retreat to safety or embrace a suicidal mission. He chose the impossible. This stubborn defiance was his essence. Born to French-Canadian parents, Major enlisted at 19, not for glory, but to prove his worth to a distant father. The army saw an unremarkable recruit, but combat revealed a natural scout, independent, ruthless, and brilliant at improvisation. His true education came on D-Day with the Regiment de la Chaudière, where he single-handedly captured a German half-track with vital intelligence. Days later, an SS patrol left him with a permanent eye patch from a phosphorus grenade. Doctors declared his war over. He refused, famously stating, "I look like a pirate. I only need one eye to aim." This was Leo Major, a man who constantly rewrote his own fate. His legend grew in the brutal Battle of the Scheldt. By 1945, he was a mosaic of wounds: a missing eye, broken vertebrae from a mine explosion, chronic pain silenced by morphine and willpower. Any reasonable army would have discharged him, but Major refused to leave. He wasn't a soldier just following orders. He was a force of nature fighting his own war. And tonight, his war was for Zwolle. Crouching beside Arsenault, grief turned into cold, focused rage. The artillery barrage at dawn was an abstraction. This was personal. Every shell would desecrate his friend's sacrifice. Major's mind analyzed the situation with brutal clarity. A standard reconnaissance was impossible. A direct attack was suicide. But he remembered the demoralized German soldiers he'd encountered. They knew the war was lost. He didn't need an army to defeat them. He needed a performance. He would become a phantom, an entire battalion in one man's mind. He hid Arsenault's body with a solemn promise, collected his friend's ammunition, and checked his 2 Sten guns. The pain in his back faded under a wave of adrenaline. His world narrowed to the scope of his one remaining eye, scanning the empty street leading to the city center. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a pipe fitter about to replumb the fate of a city, a one-eyed ghost ready to haunt an army. The mission was no longer liberation. It was a vendetta, and he would use the enemy's own fear as his primary weapon. With a final silent vow, Leo Major vanished into the labyrinth of Zwolle. His plan was audacious in its simplicity: become a specter of war. He wouldn't hold ground, he would be everywhere at once. Moving from shadow to doorway, he spotted his first target, a German machine gun nest, its crew dozing. Using skills honed in Normandy, he eliminated them without a sound, a grim but necessary start. He now needed mobility and greater psychological impact. Fortune offered both when he found a German military vehicle with a drowsy driver. In an instant, Major was upon him, forcing the terrified driver back into the car at gunpoint. He took position in the back, and the bizarre convoy rolled through the deserted streets. From this moving platform, Major waged his one-man war. He hurled grenades down alleys where he spotted activity, unleashed bursts of Sten fire, and shouted commands into the night. The effect was instantaneous. Isolated German units, hearing explosions from multiple directions, reported the same thing. The Canadians were inside the city. The enemy's coordinated defense fractured into confused, isolated pockets of fear. The chaos reached its peak near the city center. Major identified a key building, the Gestapo headquarters on the Potter Single. A symbol of oppression, its destruction would be a potent signal. Accounts differ on how the fire started. Some say the fleeing Germans torched their own files. But the result was the same. Flames engulfed the structure, casting a hellish glow over the cobblestones. The fire became Major's unwitting ally, amplifying the panic. German soldiers, already jumpy from the sporadic attacks, now saw the burning heart of their security apparatus. Communication broke down. Officers received conflicting reports of enemy strength. Major, seizing the momentum, abandoned the vehicle and continued on foot, a phantom flitting between the orange pools of firelight. His back screamed in protest, his body running on sheer adrenaline. He was no longer just a soldier. He was orchestrating a symphony of disinformation and terror. The night was no longer about killing every German. It was about convincing them that staying meant annihilation. The stage was set for the most unexpected alliance of the night. The burning Gestapo headquarters served as a beacon of chaos. But Leo Major knew illusion alone wouldn't hold. He needed eyes and intelligence. Exhausted and in pain, he moved towards the city's cathedral. There, in the shadows, he found his miracle. A small group of armed Dutchmen led by local resistance leader Fritz Kuiper. Kuiper and his men were baffled, expecting to see Canadian troops. Instead, they found a lone, one-eyed soldier demanding to know German troop concentrations. Major's urgent demeanor convinced them he was real. This alliance changed everything. Kuiper provided the critical intelligence. The bulk of the garrison, demoralized Wehrmacht units, was concentrated near the eastern bridges, preparing for a fighting retreat. With this, Major's strategy crystallized. He wasn't trying to destroy the enemy. He was going to expedite their departure. He instructed Kuiper's men to become his force projection, spreading out to key intersections, observing and reporting movements. They were also to spread a rumor: the Canadians are everywhere. Major, now a conductor of this phantom army, resumed his attacks with precise psychological intent. Armed with real-time information, Major's solo campaign became a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. He struck where Kuiper's men indicated weaker positions. He would unleash a full magazine from his Sten gun near a barracks, then sprint away to throw grenades into a motor pool. The resistance fighters amplified the effect by creating noise elsewhere. To the German commanders, their worst fear was confirmed. They were surrounded by a coordinated enemy that knew their every move. The constant, unpredictable harassment from seemingly all sides made their position feel untenable. The critical turn came around 3 a.m. German officers, unable to establish a coherent front line and believing a major assault was underway, began to make the decision Major had gambled on. The order was passed: abandon fixed positions and execute a phased withdrawal eastward. As the first gray light touched the horizon, German trucks started their engines. A city that had braced for annihilation instead heard the fading sounds of an occupying army in retreat. Major, watching from a clock tower with Fritz Kuiper, saw the movement begin. The impossible was happening. The sight of German trucks moving east was not victory, but a volatile transition. Leo Major knew the retreating force could still turn destructive if provoked. His alliance with Fritz Cooper's resistance now shifted to active city control. Major, understanding the power of symbols, instructed Cooper to have his men discreetly remove German flags and hang Dutch colors. This visual change was a psychological bomb and a silent signal of hope to civilians peering through shutters. Major himself became a roving commander, directing fighters to occupy empty German strongpoints with presence. Lighting lamps, making noise, creating the illusion of prepared Allied defenses. Meanwhile, a new element entered: the first cautious civilians. An elderly man opened his door and pushed a bottle of water into Major's hands. A woman whispered from a basement, "Are they really leaving?" In these raw moments, the abstract mission became personal. Major was no longer just a soldier. He was the protector of these specific, terrified faces. Major's most critical order was to prevent looting or any aggressive action against the retreating Germans. A single shot could trigger a bloody reprisal. The resistance acted as stewards, shepherding civilians to stay indoors. Major, from the battlements near the eastern gate, watched the final stages of the exodus. He saw disorganized columns and the abandonment of heavy equipment. The enemy was not executing a tactical withdrawal, they were fleeing a phantom. As the sky lightened to a pre-dawn gray around 4:30 a.m., a profound silence descended over Zwolle. The city was free, but Major's duty was only half done. He had to return to Canadian lines, stop the artillery, and bring his friend home. Locating Cooper, he secured a civilian car and, with help, drove back to where Corporal Farcineau had fallen. They carefully loaded the body. The weight of the night, the loss, the superhuman effort crashed onto Major as the adrenaline ebbed. He was a shattered man in a borrowed car, carrying his dead comrade, racing against the sunrise to convince his own army that a miracle had already happened. The drive back was a race against the coming light, every bump sending agony through Major's broken back. Beside him lay the blanket-shrouded form of his friend. As he neared the forward outposts, dawn illuminated the silhouettes of artillery pieces being readied. A nervous Canadian sentry nearly opened fire on the unfamiliar car. In raw desperation, Major stopped, climbed onto the roof, and stood fully exposed, waving his arms and shouting his identity. It was an insane risk, but the only way to get attention without being shot. Brought before his stunned commanding officer, Major delivered his report with exhausted finality. Farcineau is dead. The Germans are gone. The city is liberated. Canceled the barrage. The command post erupted in disbelief. Officers accused him of desertion, insanity, or lying. The plan to shell Zwolle was a product of weeks of strategy. It was unthinkable that one private could have undone it. Yet something in Major's battered, defiant presence gave his colonel pause. With minutes to spare, the commander made a fateful decision: send a fast patrol to the city's edge. If they met resistance, the barrage would proceed, and Major would face a court-martial. The patrol, a Bren gun carrier with a tense infantry section, crept toward Zwolle's outskirts as the sun rose. They expected gunfire. Instead, they were met by Dutch civilians tentatively emerging and resistance fighters with orange armbands. They entered the Sassenpoort gate unchallenged, finding abandoned German equipment and streets filling with disbelieving citizens. The radio call back was concise and astounding. Zwolle is clear. No enemy contact. At the command post, the news brought stunned silence, then erupting chaos. The artillery strike was permanently cancelled. The Régiment de la Chaudière began its advance not into a battle, but into a celebration. For Leo Major, there was no immediate celebration. Under guard, a formality now, he watched as the first trucks of his regiment rolled past. The immense weight of the night, the grief for Arsenault, and total exhaustion finally overcame him. He had done it. He had saved the city. But in that moment of victory, surrounded by the army he had rendered unnecessary for the fight, he was alone with the cost. April 14th, 1945, dawned not with the thunder of cannons, but with the rumble of Canadian vehicles rolling into a silent Zwolle. The soldiers expected a fight. Instead, they were met by a growing wave of disbelieving joy. Civilians poured into the streets, weeping and hugging soldiers. The city stood intact. For the Dutch, it was a miracle. For the Canadian command, it was a confounding puzzle. Lieutenant Colonel Mathieu walked through the streets in astonishment. His intelligence officers interviewed Fritz Kuiper's fighters and examined the German positions. The evidence was irrefutable: a panicked, hurried retreat. The timeline centered on one soldier. Mathieu faced a dilemma. Technically, Private Leo Major had committed gross insubordination and engaged in an unsanctioned combat operation. Military justice demanded punishment. But the result, a city saved, countless lives spared, and objectives secured without regimental loss, demanded recognition. The German perspective provided final validation. Interrogated Wehrmacht soldiers were consistent. They believed they had been attacked by a significant, organized Canadian force within the city. One captured officer insisted, "We heard coordinated assaults. It was a professional infiltration. We estimated at least a company." The notion that this was one man was met with disbelief. Their testimony proved Major's phantom army had been completely convincing. Back in Zwolle, with the facts assembled, Lieutenant Colonel Mathieu made his decision. Instead of a court-martial, he initiated a recommendation for the Distinguished Conduct Medal. The official citation would immortalize the night. Undaunted by the death of his friend, he continued to patrol alone for 6 hours. The enemy garrison were forced to withdraw. For Major, the celebration was hollow. The medal meant nothing next to the memory of Arsenault. As his comrades celebrated, Major stood apart, a solitary figure whose greatest triumph was linked to his most profound loss. The fury of the dawn had given way to a quiet, personal grief. The liberation of Zwolle was not the end of Leo Major's story, but the defining chapter. After World War II, he returned to Montreal, married and worked as a pipe fitter, refusing to capitalize on fame. When the Korean War broke out, he volunteered again. In 1951, commanding a scout platoon at the brutal Battle of Hill 355, he held the position against overwhelming Chinese forces. For this, he received a bar to his Distinguished Conduct Medal, becoming one of only 3 Canadian soldiers ever to earn the DCM twice in separate wars. Yet, he remained humble, redirecting praise to his fallen friend Willie Arsenault. "I was just a soldier doing my job," he would say. The people of Zwolle never forgot. Every year on April 14th, they celebrated. In 2005, they brought the 84-year-old major back for the 50th anniversary. As he walked the streets, elderly survivors wept and embraced him, introducing him to generations born into a free city. The city made him an honorary citizen and named a street after him, Leo Major Lawn. Leo Major passed away on October 12, 2008, at age 87. His legacy grew. Canada Post issued a commemorative stamp in his honor in 2020. Military academies study the Zwolle operation as a textbook case of psychological and asymmetric warfare. In Zwolle, schoolchildren learn his name and a permanent exhibition tells the story. The strategic result is quantified. An estimated 1,200 artillery shells were never fired, saving hundreds of civilian lives and preserving the historic center. Leo Major, the working-class kid who joined to prove something to his father, proved something far greater. He proved that one person armed with unwavering conviction can change history. He was, and remains, the one-eyed ghost, a soldier who did the impossible and gave a city back its future.